Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Reggie. I'm a late diagnosed autistic person, for those of you who are new here. Those of you who have liked and subscribed, I thank you so much because every time you do, it increases the chance of people being able to have access to these videos. So thank you for the support, and if you haven't, please consider doing that. I am currently trying to do a little series on autistic burnout, and basically just talking about it from my own personal understanding. I've also done a lot of research. I have also looked at a lot of other autistic YouTubers and content creators and read a lot of articles, and pretty much I've been researching this for probably a couple of years now, or close to that. But when I share stuff with you on this channel, I want to try to speak more so about my own life and how I'm affected, because we're all different and we can all be affected differently. So when I share, keep that in mind, that this is my personal journey, and if what I am experiencing resonates with you and if you can relate to it, then I'm really glad to be able to help you in your own journey. And if it's stuff that is different for you, that you don't relate to, then that's totally okay too, because we all experience life from our own unique perspectives. I'm a little bit distracted because there's a fly in my house, and that is one of the things I absolutely can't tolerate. So if you see me looking around like this, it's like, ah. But anyway, I've been spraying. I want to show you guys something. I have been spraying this on him directly for probably an hour now as he flies by, and it absolutely does not work at all. I'll show it to you again. So if you guys ever think of buying this for a housefly situation, trust me, it has zero effect. Hopefully I will be able to drown him in it if I spray him enough. But anyway, back to being on topic. So if you watched my first video, my intro to how autistic burnout affects me, I'm going to try to put it in the description. I suck at, you know, the whole YouTube thing and the whole technical part of it, so I'll do my best to get it down there for you guys, but it might be a while, I don't know, but hopefully you guys will see it. I basically started introducing my own thoughts on autistic burnout and why it is so important to really seriously begin to understand it in a very deep way. So today I want to talk a little bit more about what causes me to go into states of burnout. A lot of people, when they talk about burnout, they will talk about masking. And this is really important because masking is a huge component, like I mentioned in my last video. But a lot of people don't really understand why we have to mask. It is generally understood that we have to mask in order to be accepted by a non-autistic society, and that is true. But when we talk about that, we need to talk about that a little bit more deeply, because we don't just mask to be accepted. When we talk about what it means to be accepted, there's a lot going on with that. It's not just about being included or being made to feel included. I know for me personally, I had to mask a lot. I try not to mask anymore because I just simply don't have the energy to do it. And it's just too destructive for me. But I would have to mask, not just to feel or think I was being accepted, or to have a chance at maybe being accepted, but I also had to mask to protect myself from being bullied and from being abused socially. And I think this is a part of masking that we have to talk about a lot more. If we are authentic, and this is my experience, and it is also the experience of some of my autistic friends and people that I've spoken to on the autism forum that I belong to, oftentimes, if we are authentic, we are bullied for being authentic. We are bullied, we are socially tortured, we are socially abused for being our authentic selves. And this, I believe, is more prevalent in the what we like to refer as the high functioning society. I know that people all across the autistic spectrum experience the bullying and abuse in different ways. I would be hard pressed to find an autistic person who hasn't been bullied in one way, shape, or form. But as far as when we're talking about the higher functioning population, or I don't like functioning labels at all, but just for lack of better words, or lack of other words, I'll go ahead and use that just because it's probably just the easiest thing for me to pronounce in speech. What I feel like, especially in my life, is that the closer you are to what people consider normal, the higher the punishment will be when you do not meet their expectations of what you should be. It is the concept known as being an uncanny valley. And so for people who have invisible disabilities, I think that there's a potential to be judged much more harshly when we fall short of the expectations that they put on us. Because I know for me personally, many people expect me to be very much a neurotypical, even though they know I am autistic. I've even had situations where I've been in a medical situation where a medical doctor actually told me that even though it says I'm autistic on my chart, the medical staff is not obligated to believe that, and that it is my responsibility to act in a way that is neurotypical so that I don't upset them, because if I act autistic in any way, they will become upset with me because I don't look like what their stereotype of autism is, and therefore it is my problem and my responsibility to make sure that I act in a socially acceptable fashion, meaning a neurotypical type fashion, so that I don't cause them to become upset with me because they refuse to believe that I truly am autistic. And this is not an isolated incident. I have had that happen many, many times, not only in the medical world, but in so many different circumstances. I've even had that happen to me as a disabled member of groups that are specifically created to meet the needs of disabled people. So if I don't act in a way that they expect me to act, meaning in a neurotypical type of way because of my appearance, I tend to get bullied, socially bullied. So in order to protect myself from that, I've had to mask. So it goes more than just being accepted. It is actually, for me anyway, it had to be a protection from being socially tortured. And when I say tortured, it really kind of is very torturous to have to experience the kinds of things that we often have to experience when people treat us the way that they do. So when you live your life in that situation, I'm sorry, I'm moving around a little bit trying to get comfortable here. I'm just holding my phone. I don't have equipment to, fancy equipment to make videos, so I apologize that the quality is not as good as some of these beautiful videos that you guys are making. But anyway, when you're living a life like that, where you're constantly having to be on guard for fear or concern of being treated in an abusive way, and it can be from anyone, from perfect strangers, people that you know, even people that love you and care about you and don't realize that through them not understanding the situation, they're actually hurting you, even though they don't intend to. So it happened on so many levels and so many fronts that you basically have to put all this energy into masking to protect yourself. And that's been my personal experience. But what happens is, autistic burnout is basically an energy thing. It's a state of complete depletion of energy. And you just don't have the energy for your brain to function the way that it is designed to function. That's why we lose the skills that we lose. That's why we have so much trouble recovering. That's why, you start getting to critical levels of energy loss. Sometimes you can't recover from that. And if you can imagine what kind of energy it would take to have to consciously be protecting yourself every moment of your existence, and to have to do that on a conscious level, it's a lot. It really is a lot. And we're not designed to sustain that kind of energy loss. Another big, huge thing that affects me and that can really send me into a downward spiral that can cause me to have tremendous issues that will lead to burnout is when people project their issues onto me. And that's really important, because I know from my conversations with some of my autistic friends that this tends to happen to them a lot, as it does to me. And I think that there are several things happening with that. People often tell me, or they used to often tell me this, especially when I was younger. They used to say, if I'm experiencing all of these struggles, these social struggles, in all of these different situations, the common denominator in all of those situations is me. So therefore, I must be the problem. So therefore, I must do something to fix myself, because obviously there's something that I'm doing wrong, so it's my fault. But, and I think a lot of us might get told that. I mean, I don't know, but I think it's a possibility. And so when you're living with that kind of narrative, and you're doing everything you can to try to make yourself the best person you can be, but you're still having these issues, it gets very confusing. And then the energy it takes to try to figure all that out, and then you finally realize that, it's not your fault. It's just the way that things are designed. You're not created to function in this kind of design. That's tremendous. But people still act as if it is my fault. And what happens, a lot of people they'll see me as a person that is someone whom they can accuse of these things. The reason they see me that way is because I'm socially vulnerable. Because I don't have social intuition. I don't have the ability to understand social nuances. I don't have the ability to understand when people are hurting me or bullying me until well after the fact, after I've had help to understand it. I'm an easy target. So that target factor brings out those kinds of aggressions or microaggressions from other people. And so even if they're not predators or per se, if they have that kind of character in them, my vulnerability will tend to bring it out of them. It's just a dynamic. It's just a human dynamic. It's just, I don't even really understand how it works, but it just happens. And so, I've been told, you shouldn't have a victim mentality. Well, I don't have a victim mentality. There's a difference between having a victim mentality and actually being an actual victim. And there are people who are actual victims, and people who tend to be targeted socially are victims of social targeting. But what happens is that you get treated this way, and then people will then see you as someone who's easy for them to project their own issues onto. And so they do, and they do this over and over, these all the time. And it actually can become gaslighting if it's repetitive. Actually did some research on gaslighting recently, and Dr. Ramani, I don't know if you guys are familiar with her, but she's amazing, and she's got some really fabulous videos and definitions on gaslighting, which I think are really important for people to check out. But so what happens when people project is that they accuse you of doing the things that they're doing themselves. And one of the things I learned from one of Dr. Ramani's videos is that people who project don't realize that they're doing it when they're doing it. So it makes it very, very dangerous, because it's not like you can point it out to them. And so when people project their issues onto me, because I don't have the social maturity or the social sophistication to be able to recognize what's happening in the moment, or to even understand what's happening in the moment, it causes a lot of damage, because I can't really defend myself from it. And by the time I've understood what happened, the situation is long gone, so there's no way for me to defend myself. And because my emotional capacity is that of a 4-year-old, and I've got other videos on that. You can check out my playlist and find my videos on age functioning levels. But because my emotional capacity is that of a 4-year-old, when someone projects their issues onto me, the emotional damage that it does is insane. I mean, it's just incredible. And it's deep. And the damage it's not repairable in many ways. And it adds to the PTSD and the CPTSD and all of that. So when we're dealing with all of this stuff, and we're dealing with things like this on top of the sensory issues and, all the other issues that we have, the amount of energy that it takes to deal from stuff like that, and the amount of energy that it takes to survive stuff like that and to function under that condition or under those conditions, there's no way you can do it. It's just too much. And so your brain is trying to get through all of this, get through the way that people treat you, how they invalidate you, they gaslight you, they project their own stuff on you, they do all this stuff, and then all the other things that you're dealing with just as an autistic person, just in the world itself, as far as the environmental, sensory issues and all that. You don't have enough energy to handle all of this and get through it. You can't. Our bodies are not designed to be able to do that. And so that energy just gets drained and drained and drained until there's not enough energy left to function and to do basic life functions. And then we have a massive burnout. And that is why I believe that our burnouts can be so significant and so devastating and so damaging. I remember a huge burnout I had several years ago. It was the first time that I realized what burnout was. It was so bad that I remember having to use the bathroom. And I went to use the bathroom, and my brain had lost so much ability to function. It had lost so much energy, functioning energy, that it was like my brain and my body could not coordinate itself to physically know how to go to the bathroom. And it was a really scary moment, because I thought, man, if I'm having trouble physically evacuating, and not just, it wasn't anxiety caused or anything like that. Like some people do have actual anxiety, and that prevents them from being able to evacuate or go, or urinate or whatever. But this was different. This was a disconnect where my body literally didn't know how to do it. And I was like, wow, that's really scary, because I thought to myself, man, if this doesn't turn around, will my internal organs be affected? And it was a really scary time. I couldn't eat. I couldn't, do anything like that. And I said, I've got to try to eat something. And there's a Dunkin' Donuts like a couple blocks from my house, so I couldn't drive. I just was not able to do much of anything, and so I just decided to walk over there and get a bagel. And I remember walking outside, and everything was so heightened. It was like everything was like, I don't know, 4D on steroids or something. I mean, it was like insane, hyper intensity, everything. And I was walking on the sidewalk, and cars would drive by, people would walk by, and I would just be like in sheer terror because of the intensity of every visual, sensory, and it was just, it's hard to describe, but it was terrifying. It was like being in a horror movie. And I remember that in order for me to get to the Dunkin' Donuts to walk, it was probably like 3 blocks at the most. And not like New York City blocks, just, little small blocks. And I remember I would look between the cracks of the sidewalk and focus on tiny little flowers and little blades of grass. And that is how I was able to get there and then get home again. And then after I got home again, I was like, I got to figure out what's going on with me, because this is really, really scary. And I was able to go into a hyper focus and just research. And it took probably like 4 or 5 days of research until I started finding articles that mentioned this. And this was probably close to maybe 5-6 years ago. So even as soon as recently as that, there was almost nothing out there. And it took so much effort to find anything that could explain what was going on. And then at that point I realized that the only way I was going to survive was to isolate myself completely, cut off as much sensory input as possible, and just basically be still for days and days and days until I started to be able to function again. And since then, I've had to be very vigilant and very careful to make sure that I take care of my needs. Fortunately, I'm no longer able to work, so I can control my schedule. But I remember when I was in high school and college and I started experiencing burnouts without realizing what they were, it was very, very hard because I didn't know I was autistic. Nobody knew that I was autistic, so I had no help or anything, no support for autism. And I had to figure out how to get through these debilitating times, and not understanding what they were, or not understanding that they weren't normal. It was very, very difficult, but fortunately back then I had enough energy and enough stamina to be able to get through them. Until my final year of college, I was in college for quite a long time because I kept, having trouble. I did very well academically. I just had trouble maintaining the ability to be there, especially without any help or support for my autistic issues. And I was in my final semester before I could graduate with a bachelor's, and I basically had a big burnout, didn't realize what it was, and just neurologically just collapsed and never fully recovered from that incident. And because nobody understood that, people blamed me and said, oh, I was just lazy, or I didn't want to go to school, or I didn't try, or whatever. And nothing could be further from the truth. I literally just neurologically broke down. And because I was so used to having to mask for my entire life, that even in that neurological breakdown, I had to mask through it, and so nobody actually knew that anything had happened to me. So when we start to look at it like that, we can start to see how powerful these instances are and how dangerous they can be, because if you've gotten so used to masking in fear of being bullied or trying to be accepted, and you have something so significant as a neurological breakdown, but yet you're so conditioned to having to mask that you mask your way through it. The consequences of that are huge. They really are huge. And so now I have to be very careful. And even right now, I'm always kind of living right on the edge of burnout, because I've had enough burnouts now that I don't know if I'll ever be off of that edge. So I could slip into a burnout very, very easily. And so fortunately, I don't work anymore, and I can control my own schedule. And I'll even give you an example of how controlled my schedule has to be. Like today. Today I got up early this morning, and I was able to brush my teeth. And that's literally all I could do. I brushed my teeth, and then I had to go back to sleep for a couple hours. And then I was able to I want to work out. I need to work out. I'm actually an athlete, and I need to do some workouts for some of the sports that I do. And it's very difficult for me to be consistent in them because of this issue. But I was like, man, I gotta work out. I gotta do something. So I said, I'm gonna try to do some walking to get myself warmed up to do some strength work. And I started to just get into one of my walking routines, and I just couldn't do it. I literally couldn't do it, and I had to lay down and sleep again. And then I was like, man, I gotta try to figure out how to eat something. I'm like, man, that's really, really so hard. Okay, how am I going to eat? Because I don't have the brain functioning energy to figure that out. So I was like, let me just see if I can just find something. So I had a protein bar and drank some tea, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. And so it's so hard. And then I'm like, okay, I got to take a shower. Oh man, I got to take a shower. How am I going to do that? So I had to rest and take a nap to have enough energy to take a shower. And then I had to go to the bathroom. And the energy it took for me to go to the bathroom, I was like, now I got to take a nap again. And so this is how it can be for me. And thank goodness that no one has driven by blasting a stereo today, because if they had, it probably would have knocked me out completely, and I would have had a massive meltdown, and that would have been it for the day. So, and then just to have enough energy to do this video, it's like, okay, let me just make the effort and just do this, and then I'm going to have to lay down again and relax. And one of the things that genuinely helps me to relax is to do research. So as I was taking naps, I would then do some research, and then I would feel a little bit better, and then I'd do one thing, like maybe eat, and then I have to lay down again. And so this is how a lot of my days are, because the energy that it takes for me to deal with situations where I am talking to people, and just recently I had a situation where I was abused socially, and that took a huge toll on me. And that can happen in one way, shape, or form every single day. So having to deal with all of that, and then having to come up with the energy to just function, it's truly difficult. People look at me and they go, oh, you're not autistic, you don't look autistic. And I'm like, well, why don't you come and spend a few days with me and see what my life is like? You might actually see something very different. Because the only time you see me or talk to me is when I am well enough to be seen or spoken to. So because you're not spending time with me, seeing the struggle it is to just get through the basic functions of a day, you don't think that I'm autistic. And that is a very big factor, because people don't believe you're truly autistic, and then they don't treat you like you're autistic. People tell me all the time, oh, we want to treat you just like everybody else. We don't want to treat you differently. I'm like, well, you need to treat me differently. You need to treat me like a disabled person. Because if you don't, that's going to end up killing me. So as I continue making these videos about burnout, I will probably try to make one or two more to see what I can include that I haven't already. But it's important that we start talking about things like this, how we are affected on a daily basis, how we're affected from different types of not just sensory stimuli, but conversational stimuli, or types of social abuses like gaslighting and invalidation and projection and things like that. Because all of those things play a part, a very big part. Because it's about energy. It's about the ability to manage energy. And if you are constantly being put in a position where your energy is being drained and drained and drained and drained because you have to protect yourself socially, there's no way that you're going to be able to, to do well. It's just not possible. So I hope that this video has given you a little bit more insight on what it's like for me. And please comment if you can relate, or if you have a different experience. It's very important that we talk about this openly. So thank you so much, and we will see you next time.